Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels, too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So grab a notebook to build your TBR and let's get to today's episode of Kid Lit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Brett Bean. Brett is the author and illustrator of the graphic novel series Zoo Patrol Squad, and he's the illustrator of the Battle Bugs and the Beasts of Olympus series. He's here today to talk about his newest release, Muk N Honey, the first book in his new Treehouse Troubles series. This chapter book series combines simple text, lively illustrations, and laugh out loud humor together for a delightful bookish experience. I can't wait to introduce you to Honey Bunny and Muck Muck Moose, so let's just get right to it. Brett, welcome to the KidLit Love podcast. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy. Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. TV, film,
hmm
video games, board games, children's literature books.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There is a lot to the introduction of Brett Bean, and I'm hoping we can start there and have you tell listeners a bit about yourself, a bit about your work, and your journey here to children's literature.
Oh my gosh, that is a long journey. I'll give you the short as I can version. Um, let's see. I always wanted to be an artist and illustrator. I dabbled in creative writing in community college, and I liked it. But I always got kind of talked out of writing and comics and books, and to like go make something of yourself.
Yeah.
So I went out and I tried and failed miserably at everything because nothing was fun and what I really wanted to do. And at the last possible minute, I was working three jobs, and I says like, if I don't restart and go to art school now, I'm going to get lost in the shuffle of life, and it's going to be too late for me. And I was like 25, so I went out and got a personal loan from a bank, and I went to DigiPen, which is a video game school in Redmond, Washington. And it was 4 years truncated into two, so I had to find a program I could actually afford with my loan. And so they smashed 4 years into 2 years, and so I did that. And so my background is actually I made video games. I was a 3D modeler, so I
Wow.
made video games for Sony, PlayStation games, and I was making real world like and and so in that I was making real world games, and I had to research like really graphic horrible things that were happening, so I could model them. And my brain just went, this is not what you signed up for. This is not
Yeah.
what you paid your bank loan. I had just gotten married, and so I called up my wife, who was in Japan at a trade show. She made miniature dollhouse pieces, and she was in Japan at a trade show. And I asked her, I was like, could I restart my career? And she's like, what do you mean? It's like, can I just quit and restart? Can we like pack up and move to LA, and can I restart? And she's like, okay, sure. And so I went back upstairs and I went to the bosses. I said, hey, if you're not going to let me be a concept artist, I'm going to quit. And they gave me a big pay raise to stay on. And I didn't tell her until years later that I said no about the pay raise. Um, and I put in my 2 weeks. And then within a month, we had packed up a U-Haul and we were on the road. She got back from Japan, packed it all up, moved to California. I didn't have any plan. So I was literally working at the GameStop in Burbank, California, selling my own games that had just come out at GameStop while I went to Noman School of Visual Effects to learn how to be a concept artist.
Wow.
And then that started my concept art career in video games. I jumped from Texas and I went to Seattle and I went to San Francisco. And then I went freelance And then one of the series I was working on book-wise, I'll fast forward, um, to that is it got picked up, but it got picked up for the writers, even though they saw it as a TV series based off of my artwork. They just bought the rights to the writing. And so my brain went, it's like, you took creative writing and you know how to tell a story because you've worked in Hollywood for the last like 15 years. I bet I can be a faster writer than they can be an artist. So I just started to like every day try to start writing 15 minutes at a time, and then 15 became 30, and then 30 became longer stories, and then I have one specific, I have a sketchbook just for practice, and then I have a sketchbook for just my ideas, and those are the ones that nobody else sees, and they kind of just germinate because they don't have to be good drawings, they don't have to be ego driven. It's just about getting the ideas down, and then stuff kind of started to work out, and then I met uh, Rob at Penguin, and I remember that because we just walked around the floor, and he's like, "Pitch me some ideas," and I had five extremely thought out ideas. And of course, as you know, the story is going to be is he's like, "Well, what else you got?" And I shot from the hip. And I was like, well, I was thinking about these two ones where it's like, it's animals kind of being Sherlock Holmes in a zoo after hours when the humans go and they solve crime for each other. It's like, that's the one I want. Can you get something to me on Monday? I'm like, it's Saturday. Con ends on Sunday. I have to get you the pitch docket on Monday. Okay. So I drove home early on Sunday, put it all together, sent it off to him on Monday.
Wow.
And then that started the whole writing slash drawing person that I became. So,
Wow. Okay, I think in the 100 and something episodes that I've done on this podcast, that is my favorite introduction.
oh, I'm sorry.
I think it's
It
my
was too long. I'm sorry.
No, no, I love it because it you are meant to be here, right? And you felt what I love about it, I think just as an adult, is you followed what you wanted to do. You weren't afraid to start over, to take a loan out, go to school, and then well, let's go to another school and let's move here. And
Yeah,
to just be able to answer that call like that and just follow your own gut, and obviously it has paid off very nicely.
it
um
has.
it's
I will say though,
inspiring.
still afraid. All of those like I
Yes,
was still afraid. I always tell people that getting over that fear just gets easier because your back gets stronger to handle it. And
yes,
so you just handle it better and better. But I understand that fear. Every single one of those decisions, I was like, I hope I am not making the biggest mistake of my life. Each one of those things.
yeah,
And he's like, well, you figured out the last one, so might as well jump and you'll figure it on the way down.
that's
But
right.
it's like, yeah, the fear. So no matter what, I want to let people know it's like, oh yeah, I am still afraid of each one of those stops, but you don't let it
Yeah,
rule you, or else,
yeah,
the fear rules. You're not supposed to do that. So
right.
that's the difference.
What is the feel the fear and do it anyway
Yeah,
kind of
exactly,
motto?
exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Now, whenever someone mentions that they have some sort of notebook or journal or sketchbook, I literally stop everything and ask the one question that I have to ask before I can proceed, because I have a notebook obsession. Is what kind? Is there a special kind?
Oh.
Does it matter? Do you have a certain pen or a certain pencil? Like, let me picture that sketchbook.
Ooh. Okay, so the sketchbook, so there used to be a company that doesn't exist anymore, so I won't say it, but they used to take, it was so cool. I wish they were still around. So they would take old library books, that the library would get rid
Yeah.
of. They'd buy them in bulk. They'd slice off the binder, lose all the pages, and put art paper in it and rebind these
Oh,
old
wow.
library covers. So you open it up and some of them still have the stamps of the old libraries. They have like kids
Yes.
drawings and stuff. So I bought like 20 of them at a time, and I would see them at these local flea markets in LA. And every time I saw them, hey, it's me again, and I'd buy like 7 or 8 of them. So
Yeah.
those are always the ones that I bring because also it's nice to be reminded of books and literature and like going to the library and scholastic book fairs, all the stuff, and it's kind of
Yes.
all rolled up into one. So those are my special ones. I have regular sketchbooks, and my boring regular sketchbooks for my drawings. The idea ones are like those binder ones. So
Oh,
yeah, those are
someone
the special
listening
ones.
has to figure out how to do that craft and bring those back, because now I want one.
I know we actually bought a binder we have a whole binding machine, but we haven't opened it yet, and it's been like 4 years. It's just gathering dust because we haven't used it yet. Because I still have the other ones. I'm hoping one day when they run out, then I'll eventually do it. But yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna remember you have that. I'm gonna remember and come back and
I'll hook you up.
I
Yeah,
don't know when and be like, hey, do you remember that? Okay, so I got the backstory. I now know about the cool notebooks. I wouldn't have been able to continue the episode until I got that off of my brain. Let's talk about your newest series, Treehouse
Yes.
Trouble. Book
Yeah.
number one is Muck and Honey. It is
Hmm.
fun, it is funny, it is delightful. The pictures are amazing. Tell us about the series. Tell us about the inspiration behind it.
Okay, so the biggest inspiration behind it are my two kids and how vastly different they are from their mother and so exactly they are the exact same clones of my wife and I. So my wife and I are exact opposites, right?
Mhm.
We brush our teeth the wrong way. Every single thing is an opposite way. But teamwork makes the dream work, sort of a thing. But we ended up kicking out two clones. So my oldest one is exactly like his mom, and the youngest one is exactly like me. So they're the biggest inspiration mixed with the Mythbusters. So I used to watch that with them, and when they started doing the kids episodes, and I was a big Mythbusters fan growing up. I loved the information in there. I loved all the sort of like failure and live with it, and because that's all part of life. So there's actually some life lessons in there mixed with a lot of science and a lot of stuff that was happening. So it was a great series. Um, and so seeing my son get into crafts and like he's the kid that when you have trash and you put it in the bin, half of it will be under his bed by the time you get back to take it out. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, you can't keep this much stuff. But then he'll turn it into all of these weird creations because he
Oh,
just
wow.
like, yeah, he'll just turn it into stuff. And so that was the first thing where I was noticing is that he's a little bit high strung, anxiety driven. And that is all very calming. And it's also to my wife as well. So you kind of identify the things that sort of make their brain sort of relax and get to that certain spot. And that's kind of the offshoot of it. And then because I'm manic and I'm animated and my youngest son is, I sort of did the counterbalance that. So Muck Muck Moose is the more straight laced sort of like I follow the rules and everything's kind of in its place. And then, Honey Bunny is just like crazy manic. Um, yeah. And so I kind of made those two characters based off of the kids' personalities.
Do they know that? Do they appreciate
Um, I think a little bit. I think that they believe that I have a regular job like every other dad does.
Yeah.
I assume once they get to high school, I won't be cool anymore, but they'll at least know that dad is like, well, not a lot of people do what dad does.
Yeah.
But right now it's a little bit like they're 10 and 5. They're about to turn 11 and 6.
Yeah.
So they're still at that younger age where it's like, oh, it's just happy to be around. And like, I know dad draws, but everybody draws. I draw,
That's
you
right.
draw.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
He's not special.
Yeah, he's not special. But he's also right because I can do these conventions and meet all these people who pretend I'm special and like you get your moment in the sunlight. And it's a great balancer where you go home and you're like, no, I'm just dad. I'm just a regular person. There's no difference. And so you can start to pretend like you don't smell the same as everybody else. Um, and it's a nice balancing act where it's like, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just like everybody else. I just happen to be doing this thing, and
Right.
that's nice. So very
Yeah.
fortunate.
Kids are humbling and
Yes.
regal in that way, in a wonderful, wonderful
Right.
way. All right, so let's dive deeper into the first book. Tell us what happens. Of course, no spoilers, but give us a little overview of what we can expect Honey Bunny and Muck Muck to get themselves into.
So the first thing they get into is, well, it's treehouse trouble. So I don't think it's a spoiler to reveal that there is a trouble with their treehouse. They can't get back up, and they have the most exciting experiment happening up at the top that is slowly cooking, um, and they have to get up there. But in the meantime, they are the forest inventors for the entire forest. So all the other animals in the forest always kind of need them to build something for them because of something. So the antics of each animal as it ramps up, they're like, hey, we need your help. And so they have to kind of make decisions of like, well, how do we help, but at the same time help ourselves and do the right thing for us. So it's that kind of struggle of teamwork plus how do you help other people when you can.
And I just have to say that these inventions are fun,
Oh,
right? You,
thank you
you
very
just
much.
you
Yeah.
just mentioned one, but I want to name it. It's the triple decker hunger wrecker.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that
it
was
looks amazing. Like listeners, just picture literally this triple, even bigger than triple something with layers and layers of goodness and dessert. And oh, just something every kid is going to start drooling looking at on that page of like, I want one. I want one.
Well, I asked the kids, I'm like, what would you put in the most ridiculous, food item? If you got everything that you wanted, what would you
Yes.
put in it? And so we just sort of kind of went from there, and
Yeah.
I used their inspiration a lot on that stuff. So,
Yeah. And there were, as you mentioned, that is what starts it off, the triple decker hunger wrecker, but something happens in the treehouse um, that is a bit of a problem for them. And as they're trying to solve their problem, as you mentioned, they end up solving other problems in the forest. And so there's, I think maybe my favorite, other than the triple decker hunger wrecker, because as someone who can't cook, I just want. Um,
it's fun to say. I like Triple Decker Hugger Wrecker. I
yes,
just like
it
the
is.
words.
It is fun to say, but so is the springy, sproingy Hop-O-Matic.
Oh yeah, that one was a fun.
That is fun to say too. Yeah.
Yeah, these are all, and I had a bunch of, I have a whole list of them in that sketchbook that I would have and go, well, what's the most fun to say? What's the most interesting? Because I also remember like all the Dr. Seuss books, and I remember all the stuff me growing up, and the way words were put together, like those are interesting and fun for me, and they were fun to like have my mom say out loud because she it would kind of like fumble her up and that would make me giggle and stuff. So yeah,
Yes.
having a lot of those sort of like play off of words were more interesting to me than just coming up with
Yeah.
like a real brand name or something like that. So
Which
yeah,
means they're going
that
to be
one
more
was fun.
interesting to those younger readers too. Like they
Yeah.
are going to just be all in on those inventions. And I love how, and I'm hoping that we can talk about your process
Mhm.
of putting this whole thing together, but I do love the blueprints. The
Oh,
blueprints are
thank you.
my
Yeah.
favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I very early on I knew I kind of wanted like a quick version of also because I see kids do that all the time. You kids
Mhm.
draw out ideas. They formulate a plan. They have all these things, and they're not like finished drawings, like a real blueprint. And I love seeing that kind of stuff. So I wanted them to correlate to how kids process the world, how they would build that, and just like, okay, a sheep does this, and yeah, they would just draw a simple sheep. They wouldn't It wouldn't be like this beautiful like rendered
Yeah.
out kind of thing. It's like, oh, you just draw a sheep, draw a springy. Okay, then it goes like this. And so a lot of the times, I try to draw remembering how I drew as a kid. So I try to remove the professional
Yeah.
Brett in those drawings to say, oh no, what would I do it as a kid? And then sort of like just play in that area. So
Yeah. And it makes it so inviting. Like I could see kids and their own curious inventor wheels turning of, well, what could I draw? What could
I
I
would
do? What would mine
love
look
it.
like?
Yeah,
It's happening.
yeah,
Teachers,
I would
educators,
love it.
librarians, I could see all of us just using this book as a wonderful book, as fun, as a story, as so many of the elements and some deeper themes that I'll get to next, but as a spark for their own creativity for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. My kids love Lego, so they'll translate it from drawing into like
Yeah.
something else, or even game design. Like there's other things that it eventually leads to bigger and better, right? As they use that part of their brain, as they use problem solving, as they use that skill, it becomes deeper and bigger and can
Yeah.
and have lasting things for their life. So that would be awesome if even one kid did it. I'd be happy.
I started to. Does an adult count? I was sketching. I
Yes,
was
yes,
having some fun.
yay!
I'm a
Yay!
notebooker, so I was trying some things out.
Excellent.
So the book obviously it's a lot of It's a lot of fun. It is a fun story. You have these two friends. They're inventing. There's a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of funny things happen, but there's also some deeper themes too, right? There are friends here, but there are, and I'm saying this out loud. I'm going, these are the themes that I walked away with. I know every reader has their own theme, but I felt like there was also this kind of mental wellness theme of taking a break, having a thinking spot, and you can't always win and get everything right the first time. I felt like you had this wonderful, fun story that I was into, but I was also learning, right, about the process and about, some things for me. Um, Alongside of that. And it kind of makes sense now that you talked about your kids being the sparks and that creation, that making, that under the bed hiding, that creating, that process really is a way for many of us to decompress. And so I really love seeing that element in here.
Oh, thank you. I think the book directly tries to speak to my 10-year-old for the most part. It is things that it is themes and things that I've said directly to him as he gets frustrated. The 5-year-old is just starting to do that with his drawings. He gets super frustrated, and I also know how many people look up to their parents and what they do, and when they try to do the same thing, it's very frustrating that they can't do it because they didn't see the 20 to 30 years of missteps and misfires.
Yeah.
So that failure, that worry, that concern, you have to talk about it. You have to at least acknowledge it, because if you don't, then it really does make them feel isolated from the experience of what it takes to do any of these things. That
Yeah.
failure does happen. It's a part of the process and everything, and then how you deal with your emotions and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so most of it is me writing like full conversations of just what I would have with my son and go, all right, yeah. All this stuff is what do I want to say to him in a fun, engaging way
Right.
that hopefully will work with a kid who's either reading it alone or with a family. And then it's an I call them aha moments,
Yes.
where sometimes you don't have them after you read them, but they can happen like a year later, or they can have moments later and go, oh, that's what they meant. Oh, aha. And I would have that with my professors in college. And that's what they would say. It was like, I'm going to tell you something right now. This is going to be an aha moment, and it's not going to be today. And they would say something. I'd be like, whatever, old man.
Yep.
And years
Yep.
later, they're like, aha. Okay. So,
Yeah, I love that because we really can think about every book that we've ever read from childhood all the way through as just these potential aha moments that can come
mhm.
now or can come later. I love that. I love that analogy. I'm writing that down for me. So how did you go about creating it? You do both. You've got the words, you've got the images. I want to know the nitty-gritty. Like do the ideas and the words come first and then the pictures come, or is a page kind of formulated in your mind and then you go back, and is it in your notebook? Is it digital? Like just tell me all the things. How you do this, because I'm in awe. Someone I'm in awe of authors. I'm in awe of illustrators. I'm really in awe of people that end up doing both.
Oh, um, well, I would say first and foremost, I'm a visual creature. So the first thing I do is I will sketch out a couple of characters that I believe in. So there's some nugget in there that I go, oh, who are the two kids where there's like studious and bigger and then smaller and crazy. And so I start sketching out characters. And then from there, once I have the two characters, and I'm not going to do it like a finished drawing or anything like that. It's just going to be enough where I call it the zygote of the idea. It's just starting to kind of be something, right? Um, and then I try to come up with, well, what's a story that would engage me enough? What are they about? And so I try to think of them as actual people.
Yeah.
I know that they're animals, but they're still people inside. So if I'm going to breathe life into them, they have to be somebody in there. As simple a drawing or as complex, they got to be somebody. And then once that I'd say it's like it's something that just kind of worms in to where I've got a lot of these stories, but then some of them rise to the surface where I
Mhm.
think about them when I wake up or I'm in the shower and they pop in, something pops in, or a story element pops in. I go, okay, this is the character. These are ones that are coming to the front. This means this is more important than the other ones. The other ones can take a back seat. We're going to bring these ones forward and take it to where it needs to go until it can't go any further. And that's usually when I try to build out who they are, but then a a more complex storyline of what would they do if I put them in a situation. And if there's life in that situation, then it breeds the next part, which is coming up with a beginning, a middle, and end.
Okay.
You can all I feel like I can always write in the middle and bridge the gap between those things. But if I don't have a beginning and a middle and end, I don't actually have a story.
Mhm.
So I know that some people who are some brilliant writers can just come up with a theme or idea and just write from beginning to end and just go, great, blah, 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 blah. And then this happens. And then they go through and me, I need a target
Yeah.
to go towards. Now, even if that target ends up changing at the end, I am writing towards an overall structure.
Yeah.
And then I can change it if it happens, because I'm doing that with the comic I'm working on now. I've changed the structure, but I had an initial idea that I was working towards that mountain climb, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it makes it, I don't know, it makes me either it's easier on me to kind of write towards that, or I feel safe. I feel like I can make happier accidents knowing that I'm going to trip over that finish line and I feel solid about the finish line.
Yeah.
So how I get there, go ahead. So it's easier in those terms. And so it's just a gradual process. And then I start writing. But I'm also a published artist, so I will say that this started as a pitch doc where I had a beginning, middle, and end synopsis, and then I would send it off to Penguin and say, great. Does this work for you guys? Do you like where I'm going with this? And then they say yes, and then I go, great. Now I have to sit down and actually do the work.
Yeah.
The real hard part of it is like standing and pacing and having post-it notes. I still put them on a wall and I move my
Do.
story around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I still have post-it notes. I put it on the back wall. You can see it even though your readers can't. It'll be on my closet wall, and I'll place it there,
Yeah.
and then I'll just keep moving stuff around. So certain animals get introduced or certain ideas, and I'll just place it around, going, okay, now I have my structure, and I'll literally just sit there and write and then look back and go,
Yeah.
okay, and then this happens, and then I start filling in the gap. And then after that, sorry, this is boring. And then
It's
after
not.
that,
It's exactly what I hoped for.
you have to start introducing your sentence structure because you're building and writing towards a certain group.
Right.
So the first draft, you're writing to tell yourself the story, right? The whole first draft is telling yourself the story. So it's more stream of consciousness out. And then you have to go back and whittle it down to go, great, now I'm telling kids age 6 to 9 who are bridging the
Yeah.
gap between early readers and later readers. And so you change your sentence structure, you change big words that are they're not ready yet, or you've tried to put in words that are bigger because I'm a proponent of I remember doing that as a kid. I remember reading books that were past my age and asking my parents or looking it up in a dictionary what that big word meant,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And it was like, ooh, I felt smarter for looking that up. So there's the lowest common denominator writers, and then there are, I think, writers that are trying to get kids like ramped up,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like that's the kid I want to aim at. I know it's I honestly I think it's a smaller pool of kids that are aiming for that, but it's a more worthwhile pool to me, so it's more important to me. So I almost have some pushback with like no, I'm going to leave that word in. We're going to leave that one. We're going to see if they can get it or if they can like rise up to that occasion because I think kids will always rise up to whatever
Yeah.
bar you set. You
Mhm.
know, so
I absolutely agree. And as an educator who has worked with little people and who has worked with kids who have difficulty learning literacy, who are reluctant readers, they always rise to the occasion. When you believe in them to do the thing, they believe themselves to do the thing. And when they do rise to the occasion, that is just like the best momentum
yeah,
forward. And what I love about knowing that this is book one, right, is that once they get to know these characters and they feel safe in your book, they feel settled, they feel confident, there's another one we can handwrite to them and just keep them going. And
Yeah.
that is such a gift as
Yeah.
as a reader to be able to get in a book.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
So how about the images though? Are you
Oh,
there in your sketchbook? They end up did like how does that go?
so that's that is more of that is a difference between when I send in the script, or the script, I'm so into Hollywood. When I send in, the final manuscript to them, they will start to break it down uh, it, visually because I'll have written in there saying this will be a half page illustration, this will be a
Right.
spot illustration, this will be a full page, and we start doing the play together between the publisher and myself, where it's like, how do we lay out the book? And then I'll start doing layouts. So I'll get each page as like page one, page two, page three, and it'll be an orange text of like, this is the spot, you have this much space. And then I'll start drawing my layouts on the computer
Yeah.
and I'll start laying everything out. And then I turn all that in, I turn all 80 pages in, and that kind of goes through a process to make sure that the words are meeting their expectations, it's within the age range, and the drawings, like are approved and they're within the margins and everything. And then then they send it back saying, let's go to town. You have, it's always 2 weeks late, so hey, you're already 2 weeks late. And then I go through the process of I ink it digitally in Sketchbook Pro, which is a program on my Mac, and then I color it in Photoshop usually. So
Wow.
I do that, and then send it all back to them, and then they dress it up and put it in and send it off to the printers, and
And there we go.
that's the way it goes. Yeah, and then you go, oh my gosh, I got a book. That's
I
awesome.
know. You can hold it and hug it and be so proud of it.
I know. Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's a lot of fun.
So when might we be able to expect book two? Can you give us any of those details?
Um, I can't give you the details of when it's going to come out. I can tell you that the entire manuscript is done, all approved. I've done all the layouts of the entire book. Jay at Penguin is actually putting all of the pages together. And once that's all done and everybody's kind of gone through it and everybody gets the thumbs up, then it'll be sent back to me. I'm hoping within the next week or two. And then it's just off to the races. It's when I can get all the artwork done with all the other deadlines and stuff. So I I presume not too long, but you know, also you get in their you're getting their docket, and books take a long time, and they get
Yes.
put into their print, and then the print has to come over, and then everybody's got to get it, and it has the same release date, so everybody has a fair shake between the big stores and the small stores, and
Yeah.
so all that stuff kind of has to work out. So I don't have an official date, but it is well on its way.
Yeah.
So.
That's okay. That's all we needed. We to know that book two is coming for readers is all we needed to know. So anything else you're working on that listeners might like to know about in all of the worlds that you have
Oh
mentioned?
my gosh. I I work on a lot of stuff, so it's really tough. I'm working on a comic book with Image Comics, so this is a my first creator owned. So I'm writing it and I'm drawing it, and then it'll be a we call them floppy comics. So it'll actually be like in a real comic book store, which is also one of my dream goals. My dream goal was to work with Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and I got to do that, and I've got to work with all these properties, and there's certain ones where I'm like, these are bucket list things. The
Mhm.
comic book is definitely a bucket list thing, is having my own creator owned one. So I'm hard working on that one. I'm doing like Marvel Snap illustrations, so I do like comic book stuff too, for the major publishers. I work on TV and movies, so I got a little bit of everything kind of going on. So I'm trying to juggle always three or four projects at the same
Mhm.
time, and a board game that's supposed to come out next year too. So
I
yeah,
imagine you have fun days. This sounds
I
fun to be creative like this in so many
it
ways.
is it is a lot of fun. I've learned that saying yes to opportunity instead of money has led to better and bigger opportunities. And so I've found myself being able to work with a lot of great people And I always tell my students, I'm like, meet your deadlines and don't be a jerk. If you can do those two things, you can go a lot further than anybody who has this like so-called talent
Yes.
thing, you know? And so I kind of pride myself on hopefully not being a jerk and meeting deadlines. And then that sort of snowballs into the next project. And people call you up and say, great, I want to work with Brett again.
Yeah.
And you kind of find a way. And that's kind of what you're, you know, trying to build.
That is a good life motto. Chasing the
I
opportunities, not the
Yeah,
money.
chase the
Yeah.
opportunities and not the money. Yeah, because money, I mean, really, at the end of the day, money does come and go, but opportunities, like they push who you are as a person. It pushes who you are uh, artistically. Everything. So there's no negative to that. I mean, there's a negative if you can't feed your family and feed
Right.
feed yourself. So I understand the balancing act that you have to do. Um, but I always say yes to that and say yes to anything that is fearful or makes you uncomfortable because I think that
Yeah.
is part of the same thing. It's part of that goal of like that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to explore yourself and go, why is that uncomfortable? Is it just because it's unknown?
Right.
Okay, great. Then you should attack that with vigor, like go at it, and
Yeah.
it gets easier every time. So
Yeah. I feel like I've gotten some life coaching today too, Brett. Awesome. Where can listeners find you online so they can keep up with you and all of the things you've got going on, and especially when those books will be coming out next?
Okay, well, I have a website, www.brettbean.com. So that's BRETTBEAN. That will have links to everything. It'll be links to my shop. I've got a Substack that I kind of talk about conventions and expos that I do. I try to do 7 or 8 a year that I'm usually going out to. And then all the new things that I've got coming out from illustrations and books and all that kind of stuff. And Instagram I still use quite a bit. So I still post like uh, daily drawings and little works in progress and little snippets and stuff like that.
Oh,
So that's sort of my brain on paper will be on Instagram.
on
So
Instagram. Okay.
yeah.
Well, I will put links to your website. I can even put a direct link to your Substack. I'm addicted to Substack. I feel like I
Oh
have found
yeah.
my happy place on social media in Substack, and I'll put
It's
links to
it's like the
Instagram
old
as well.
it's like the old bloggers, right? It's the what we
Yes.
used to totally be into where it's like you're curated, you found the stuff that you wanted to look instead of the
Yes.
algorithm and yeah,
Yes.
100%. It's that
Yes.
stuff you kind of remember.
I
Uh,
love it. I love it.
yeah.
Um, so I will be sure to put all those links to make it easy, and of course, links to your books that we
Oh,
talked
thank
about
you.
today in the show notes. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. No,
Best
thank you.
introduction ever. Good life coaching. It was a wonderful episode, and I thank you so much for taking the time to come on today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time too. Thank you.
And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.